So one of the first topics we're going to talk about really quick is why we got involved in cannabis and why we're passionate about cannabis. I would say for me, it was literally, I consumed cannabis for the first time when I was 15. I had no idea. I had undiagnosed PTSD at the time. I went from getting D, C's, and F's in schools to A, B's, and C's, socializing, everything changed for me. My mom worked in law enforcement for vice narcotics, so she was not very happy about this. And she literally tried putting me in inpatient rehab for consuming cannabis because she swore I was gonna become a heroin addict. Even the counselor was like, she's got a job, she's got good grades, she's fine. So I knew they were lying to us then. And you know, I'm a lot older than 15 now, and I've been very successful in all my endeavors, consuming cannabis the entire time. Graduated with honors with all my degrees. And so that I think is what started my passion. But then when I moved to Colorado in 2001 as a medical marijuana refugee, there was no safe access. You'd go to your local street dealer for cannabis, but you didn't know what you were getting. You didn't know if it was clean. You didn't know if that person was safe. What if that person followed you? These types of things. So my ex-husband and I literally emerged cannabis from the black market, and it was as dramatic as it sounds. And eventually we helped get the first few thousand patients registered in Colorado ourselves with a group of people who helped push Amendment 20, our medical marijuana bill. And then eventually that became a dispensary, not because it was a multi-million-dollar endeavor like it is now. It was more out of necessity and safety to have everybody come into one spot. And then we taught growers how to cultivate cannabis using natural methods to reduce pesticide use and make it safer for patients. I dissolved that business, and then now I run TCMS Global, which is a management and business development consulting firm. And the passion is there. I wish I wasn't passionate about something like this so much because it's gotten me in some hot water, but I can't complain now. My company is going to be making $1 million this year, and I'm like shocked, but at the same time excited because it works. And I'll be happier though when I see a more diverse industry. But looking at this room, actually, it's starting to become more diverse. It used to be a lot less diverse than this. So just seeing the audience alone is telling me that we are making major efforts and changes.
I'm Jodie Emery, and I don't have a business card because I don't know what to put on it. I have a whole lot of things on my record. I started my cannabis activism in 2004, but before that, in high school, I was against cannabis, against drugs, against drinking, sex, anything teenagers did was bad, and I was a teacher's pet, authoritarian, loved a man in uniform, trusted authority with my life. And then my best friends started smoking pot, and I told them they were stupid, and they were like, no, look at Pot TV, one of the first video websites ever on the internet, launched in the year 2000 alongside CBC. Pot TV was launched by Mark Emery. This Mark Emery seed-selling guy was also creating Cannabis Culture magazine, a print magazine like High Times, but more focused on activism. And these stupid stoner friends of mine actually ended up being the smartest people I knew. And when 9/11 happened, they were like, oh, we know all about the military-industrial complex and that it's actually Saudi Arabia and the Afghanistan poppy wars are the reason for the oil wars and blah. And I was like, but you guys are the stupid stoners. Like, how do you know so much about world geopolitical stuff? We're in grade 10, And I started questioning, what had I been told? And then I tried pot, the same time I tried beer. I didn't like beer. And here I am, so obviously cannabis appealed to me. But what it really did is what the government fears that it does, and this is why Nixon in the 60s happened. Because you question authority. And then once you start saying, wow, the government lied about pot, it doesn't do all the things they did, it's actually good for your health, well, geez, the cocaine warnings must be BS too. But let me tell you, a year later in grade 11, I became addicted to cocaine. And it was because the government lied to me, and it was because the drug war was such a massive lie. And then I got on antidepressants, and my parents sent me to boarding school for grade 12, where I graduated with honors and got into 3 post-secondary institutions, because you had to. But I didn't trust authority. And I moved to Vancouver in 2004, and I ran for the BC Marijuana Party in the provincial election, and I started volunteering at Cannabis Culture Headquarters with Mark Emery. And if you don't know who Mark Emery is, he's an extremely controversial, interesting, fascinating character, but none of us would be here without him. In 1994, nearly 25 years ago, a quarter century, he moved to Vancouver, BC from here in Ontario, where he broke Sunday shopping laws and broke rap music laws and broke book magazine bans. Everything that was illegal, that was unfair, censorship-wise, Mark Emery would challenge. Civil disobedience, challenge the law, get arrested, go to court, change the law, and now you can shop on Sundays. So he moved to Vancouver in 1994. I'm in grade 4 at this time. He's doing this with all the pioneers, way before I even know anything about pot. And what he did was he started selling marijuana seeds to anyone in the world. And in Cannabis Culture magazine, there are 12 pages of 500 strains of marijuana seeds. And he said, when you buy seeds from me, that money will go to the marijuana legalization movement. And in 2005, right after I showed up in Vancouver, US Drug Enforcement Administration officials worked with the Canadian Liberal government to have Mark Emery arrested in Canada to face charges to go to the United States and face life in prison for, as what the DEA said in their press release, Mark Emery, the leader of the legalization movement, has been arrested. Legalization lobbyists have one less pot of money to rely on. The DEA document said Mark Emery gave money to every political movement, every ballot initiative that allowed for medical marijuana, Colorado, everywhere. California, when they got medical marijuana, where'd they get their seeds? Where did all these genetics come from? Came from over 10 years of Mark Emery selling seeds illegally, breaking the law openly and saying, when you buy from me, you get the money. And he gave $5 million away before George Soros even showed up with a little bit, before Prop 19 when Richard Lee gave some money. Nobody was given money. But he also broke the law and said, here's your bongs, your vaporizers, your books, your magazines. Books and magazines are still illegal in Canada, Section 462.2 of the Criminal Code, pot books. You guys are all criminals for these handouts here. But when I started working at Cannabis Culture and became the editor of the magazine, and we did the print issue, and we were researching Colombian drug wars and how, you know, people were getting killed in narc operations and like all this fascinating information. But for me, it was always about the civil liberties. It was always about the fact that these laws hurt people. The laws hurt people. Cannabis doesn't hurt people. Cannabis heals people. Cannabis is medicine. Cannabis is good for people. So my campaign for my nearly 15 years of activism, so you've actually been at it longer than me, so good on you, like many other pioneers, but it began with being about the civil liberties. And now it's a lot about the money, but what Mark Emery demonstrated with the seed business and his head shops and our vapor lounge, we've been operating for 13 years, smoke weed in a safe environment, even legal states don't have that. I'm on probation. People still use civil disobedience in their businesses when they promote cannabis. To fast forward a bit, Mark got arrested in 2005, worked out a plea deal, got extradited to the United States in 2010. So for 4.5 years, I traveled to Georgia and Mississippi to visit my husband in prison. And I can tell you, I never cried for us, but I cried for all the families I saw there, families and people of color. The people who lived in third world nation situations where the prison in Yazoo City was the only job and you had to have all 5 pictures on the wall, the president, the attorney general, the Bureau of Prisons, the local warden, and the local people, all people of color having to make their money incarcerating their brothers and sisters and fellow community members, and it made me sick. And that really fired me up, that when I had to spend all those years, I spent 5.5 months traveling back and forth, 5.5 months inside prison visiting rooms. This is a war on peaceful people, and even those who are not peaceful should not be punished, because we should be helping our fellow people. So Mark got out in 2014. We had nothing. We had no money. We'd never sold weed. It was only seeds and magazines and media and activism. I had sought a Liberal Party nomination. I've run for office with the BC Green Party twice. I was the Liberal Vancouver East candidate, the de facto marijuana candidate, until they said, we don't want you as a candidate. Your message doesn't jive with our plans. But here I am still speaking. I decided I need to do a big civil disobedience act to demonstrate what legalization should look like. Everybody was talking about legalization, but it was all restrictions, limitations, punishment, warnings, you sinful person, we're gonna tax you and fine you, and like, that's not what it's about. Where's the oldest model? Amsterdam. Go get some cannabis with adults. You don't need to register. Don't give your name. Don't lie about being sick or be forced to admit you're sick. Just be an adult in a civilized environment. So we opened up cannabis culture dispensaries, and we were the first ones to say, we're gonna go for all adult access. If legalization is coming, Let's do private retail stores. And here in Toronto, we had a wonderful opening on May 2016. So out of our 25 years of activism as cannabis culture, only a brief period was providing cannabis access. And every time we did it, I said, hello, I am doing this openly, breaking the law to challenge the law, or if you'd like, please license us the way you did Airbnb and Uber, who also broke the law. But no, I got arrested, I got charged, I got strip searched twice, thrown in a maximum security prison, and went through what a lot of people go through. And that triggered a lot of my Me Too PTSD, having authorities tell me to remove my clothing, and if I do not, they will tear my clothes off. And I have lost all my control. For what? Who did I hurt? Nobody, we only helped people. So that arrest really woke me up again to the extreme unfairness, and at least I knew I'm gonna be okay. The international media circus is waiting at the courthouse. I'm gonna be okay. You know who's not okay? All the poor people and the moms with their kids being taken away. All the people who don't have a defense. All the people who will never set foot in a room like this. Those people, that's what this is about. But, like Mark Emery did with his businesses, you need money to make a difference. Charities need money, movements need money. That's why he gave away all of his money, millions of dollars. Make the money to give it back. So my plea to everyone entering this space, as I am now banned, I accepted a plea deal with a giant fine instead of jail time. I'm out until next December on probation, and in the meantime, I am running a hemp-themed coffee shop because hemp can save the planet, and activism can save the people. And our passion is to use this plant for the good that it makes, not for exclusive profits or benefits. We're switching the black market to the white market. We need to talk about equality, fairness, and justice for all those prohibition victims and pioneers. And I now have my criminal record. I can't do it. So if you guys can make money, please give it back to goodness and fairness and justice to all the victims who are faceless and nameless, who built this for you. Please give back. Thank you. That's how I got into it.
Anne-Marie,
Yes.
what makes you passionate about cannabis?
Well, first, I want everyone to just recognize that they're in possession now of contraband material and are therefore breaking the law as it presently stands. So you may want to get my card after this because I am a criminal defense lawyer and I do defend people charged with cannabis-related offenses. In my other hat, what I do is I'm the director of the Campaign for Cannabis Amnesty. And the Campaign for Cannabis Amnesty is a national campaign launched 4 months ago in Toronto at the Global Marijuana March that is challenging the government to go further than simply legalizing marijuana in Canada, but actually recognizing that the reason that we are here today is because of the sacrifices and because of the suffering that a lot of people like Jodie and her husband and activists for decades have been going through in order to persuade the government of how important it is to turn away from a strategy of war on drugs, tough on crime initiatives when it comes to cannabis and regulating cannabis. So in my sort of day job as a criminal defense lawyer and a regulatory lawyer, the people who I see come through my door who are charged with cannabis offenses are by and large racialized individuals, so people of color, Black people, and in Canada also Indigenous people. In Toronto, you are 3 times more likely to be arrested for a cannabis-related offense if you're Black. In Vancouver, you are 9 times more likely to be arrested if you are Indigenous. In Winnipeg, you are 6 times more likely to be arrested if you are Indigenous. And those statistics stopped me in my tracks because the consequences of having a criminal record, even if you don't end up with a carceral sentence, so a sentence of incarceration, are so absolutely profound. And they impact not only that individual, but there's a generational impact that contributes to the reality of systemic racism in our country. And as a person of color who defends other people within the system, who sees day in and day out the same types of individuals being prosecuted heavily by our criminal justice system, and this is in Canada where the sentences are relatively more lenient than in the United States. You would not get for personal possession a life sentence in Canada. You may very well get a life sentence for possessing 5 grams in the United States if you are caught under a 3 strikes you're out policy. So even in Canada, I see the devastating impact that criminalization of cannabis has on the daily lives of people. And when I heard that the Canadian government was contemplating a 180 reversal in terms of its strategy and its strategic approach to cannabis as a plant and as a substance that is regulated, I was thrilled. And then, when the bill came out, I read it, I thought about it, and I was disappointed because there is nothing in the bill that recognizes the historical impact of prohibition on people's lives. And just to give you a sense of the number of what I mean by on people's lives, there are 500,000 Canadians now who have a criminal record for personal possession of marijuana. 500,000. That's an extraordinary number of people whose lives are impacted every single day by the legacy of criminalization. And the legacy of criminalization comes in so many different forms. It comes in inability to get employment of one's choice, inability to get housing of one's choice. There are a lot of community housing initiatives that require background checks, volunteer placements that allow people to have meaningful contribution to their communities. Through the Campaign for Cannabis Amnesty, we're collecting stories of people who have had their lives impacted, and a lot of what we're learning is that some people had cannabis convictions when they were in their late teens or early 20s, took a plea deal, pled guilty, didn't think much about it, and then 20 years later, when they have young children and are trying to volunteer for their hockey camps or school trips, they're denied because they don't pass a background check. These are people who cannot cross the border into the United States because it's flagged on United States Customs and Border Control. These are people who have, the impact on their lives is so profound, and there are 500,000 of them. And they are nowhere mentioned in the legislation that the government has crafted that is now going to be law, Bill C-45, on October the 17th. And so myself and a number of activists, Jodie was one of the people that I reached out to who generously contributed the domain name cannabisamnesty.ca. And on May the 5th, we launched, lawyers, activists, academics launched the Campaign for Cannabis Amnesty. And we are actively lobbying the government to rectify the legacy of criminalization in Canada, because it is not sufficient for us to move forward without looking back and correcting this profound error. It is not, and it is unfair to continue to saddle people who have paid their dues to society for something that the government in its own bill recognizes that it is harmful and irresponsible to criminalize. It is not fair that these people continue to live with that legacy. It robs them of the dignity of a life that they deserve, and it robs our country of the benefit of having them contribute as full participants in our society. And so the Campaign for Cannabis Amnesty is lobbying the government, collecting stories, gathering resources and educational material. I implore you to go on our website. We also have a petition. We have about 2,500 signatures on cannabisamnesty.ca. We have a hashtag that's trending on Twitter, hashtag #MyCannabisStory, where we're profiling people who've had real life stories of cannabis convictions and the legacy of those convictions. And we are also building resources to educate not only the government, but also the public about why this culture shift is so important. It is important for Canada to take this opportunity to become a leader in progressive drug reform, and this is the way to do it. There's nobody that should be left out of this revolution, and so many people are. And one of the things that we're doing right now is we are helping to draft, we've actually drafted a piece of legislation that is going to be up on our website shortly. We have a testimonials page that allows people to submit their testimonials. One of the topics that that one can submit a testimonial in respect of is why cannabis amnesty is important for the cannabis industry. And so I'm asking, if you are here and you're in the cannabis industry and you're passionate about amnesty and you're passionate about contributing back to the community and all those people who paved the way for us to be here today, I implore you to submit a video. We're also teaming up with a number of cannabis companies. We haven't done the press release there yet, so I'm not going to name them, but they are developing a product line where 100% of the proceeds will go towards funding the campaign. We've been reached out to by Senator Murray, who is a senator from Vancouver, and he is going to table a cannabis amnesty bill in Parliament the day after legalization, so on October 18th. And it's a private member's bill, but we are honored to work with him on it, and we're nonpartisan, so we're also honored. We're also happy to work with the Liberal government who wants to hear what we have to say about this very important topic. And if any company here feels so inclined to contribute to the campaign in any way, we do have a fundraising and sponsorship team that, in addition to launching campaigns alongside cannabis companies who wish to put their money where their mouth is and contribute to the legacy of this being a positive change in our society. We also accept financial donations. So if you're more interested about the campaign, please do visit our website, cannabisamnesty.ca, and if you're ever arrested for a cannabis-related offense, I'm there for you.
So in a room full of investors, I'm sure you guys are probably wondering, why is diversity important? How does it impact the bottom line? And what you can do to help create a more diverse and just industry. Studies have shown that companies that are diverse make more money and they're more productive and more creative because you're bringing in more ideas and people from different cultures to contribute for that. There's programs across the United States. One started in Los Angeles, and Oakland also. Pretty much California has taken the lead on social equity, where investors investing into companies owned by people of color who have lived, or people in general who have lived in impacted zip codes. So the drug war was very targeted and went into Black and Latino and Native communities and targeted these communities. So the majority of these people obviously are going to be people of color. So what they're doing to make amends in California is they're giving priority processing for candidates or applicants, for cannabis touching businesses. So that's one way that you can get involved. We have just 4 minutes, so I want to give the last 4 minutes to you guys and convince them why it's so important to give money to people of color.
A lot of people are coming into the cannabis space, and because cannabis has been a subculture, we can't really blame newcomers for not understanding the scope of it. But let me tell you that the cannabis industry is massive. It already exists. Legalize it meant legalize what already exists. There are a lot of entrepreneurs and people who have dreams and visions, and they're held back by lack of financing, lack of capital and connections. So let's not create a glass ceiling. Let's make sure that everybody who has any involvement in cannabis has an equal opportunity, so that it's not just the former police officers and politicians who oppose legalization who can run these pot companies and make big stock profits, but that the smaller entrepreneurs can do so as well. And like all businesses, if you as a business owner actually have authentic, real integrity and really care about this, and it's not just some campaign thing you hope to increase your profits, if you really truly believe it, I promise you the cannabis community is watching, and they're sensitive and they're suspicious, so they don't trust all these newcomers. So please make an effort to connect with the real community and find out what is being done on that grassroots level.
Yeah. And so just to briefly add to that,
yeah, no, please.
Okay, corporate social responsibility is something that a lot of cannabis companies are very interested in because of the legacy of criminalization of cannabis in North America and across the globe. So one way that cannabis companies integrate corporate social responsibility into their model of governance is by using their resources to contribute to the communities that were the most impacted by cannabis criminalization. And so, as Jodie was saying, a lot of the original activists in the community are watching carefully. And so some companies are very concerned about the legitimacy of their brand in this very saturated space that is developing. And one way to enhance the legitimacy of a cannabis brand is to acknowledge and recognize this history, connect with those who are deeply impacted, and find a way to meaningfully contribute to their reintegration into this industry, particularly focusing on how it's impacted people of color and other racialized groups in North America.
Cannabis amnesty, hashtag it.